Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this final round coverage of the 2015 U.S. Women's Chess Championship taking place in St. Louis, Missouri. From the final round, I selected this game between Viktorija Ni with the white pieces and Apurva Virkud with the black pieces. Two players we haven't looked at before in this tournament, but I thought this was a really interesting attacking game. Good example of a kingside attack. So Viktorija Ni is a veteran of these tournaments. She's played in the U.S. Women's Championship 3 times before. Her opponent, Apurva Virkud, this is her first time playing in the U.S. Women's Championship. She's only 16 years old, so a young and upcoming talent. So Viktorija kicks off with knight f3, and we get after d5, c4, the Reti opening. So if you watch Chess Explain's chess channel, you will see that he plays this opening from time to time. He quite likes this setup, so it's interesting to see one of the top players take it on as well, e6 and b3. So setting up this funny-looking line of pawns. But the idea with White's setup, at least, is to fianchetto both bishops. And what Black is going for is just a more center control and kind of a classical setup against the Reti. So knight to f6, developing with control of the center, g3, preparing to fianchetto the kingside bishop, bishop e7, bishop g2, castles, castles. So this is one of those positions where both sides kind of get what they want. There's no immediate clash, and because of that, there's no trades to start with, so you can get a long game with lots of chances for both sides to go wrong or to develop an edge. Knight to c6, continuing to develop with center influence, and e3. And now we can start to see the point of White's setup. So this bishop on the queen side is looking at all of these dark squares. The knight and the pawns here on d2 and e3 are also controlling this diagonal. So White, even though she hasn't put a pawn in the center, actually has quite a bit of center influence with her pieces and with these 2 pawns. And also, not having put a pawn in the center, both bishops have open diagonals. So that's one of the interesting points with this setup. Although later on we'll see that the center does get blocked up. It's just not happening immediately. So it's one of the interesting features of this game. So Apurva continues with b6. These all look like pretty normal moves. Queen e2 and a bishop to b7, developing a bishop along the light square diagonal to potentially trade off White's bishop on g2. That's a strong piece. Potentially rook to d1, putting the rook opposite the queen and maybe preparing for some center pushes. And Apurva decides to exchange in the center. At this point, there's lots of different ways to play this. Black can also just kind of sit on this position and maybe develop the rook to c8 or do something like that. But she decides to go ahead and trade. And it does create kind of a funny-looking pawn structure over here on the queen side. Maybe these are weaknesses that Black can play against later. The queen gets off of the newly opened d-file, out of the glare of the rook. Viktorija plays just d3, shoring up the center and still maintaining this open diagonal for the bishop. The rook comes over to d8, so putting some pressure on this d-pawn, which is a little bit under-defended. Knight b to d2, so just developing the last piece. Queen to c7 was played here. It's interesting, the queen probably could have gone to c7 immediately, so maybe Black wasted a little bit of time. But this is a closed-up position, and these little maneuvers don't seem to hurt either side. Chess Engine rates this position as about even. So now Viktorija decides at this point to go for a closed center. So she starts with the move e4. And Apurva is okay with this setup. She plays e5 and sort of agrees to having the blocked center. And what's funny about this position, from this point forward and for quite a few moves, the engine rates Black's position as better than White's. And so it is interesting to think about. I mean, it's a closed center where it appears that Black has a little more space. Black has access to this square on d5 and a backwards d-pawn to attack. So you can see why the engine might prefer black, but, well, just watch what happens in the game. The idea that Viktorija has with blocking up the center like this is to launch a kingside attack. And she starts with the move knight to f1, trying to maneuver her pieces, and eventually prepare the move f4 to launch that pawn storm on the king. So knight to f1, you might wonder why she doesn't just move this knight out of the way immediately and play f4, but the answer is revealed in the next move, because Apurva plays knight to d4, a very strong outpost for the knight, and so this knight on f3 has been kept in reserve just to trade that knight off when it shows up there. C takes d4, and now the center is blocked completely. Bishop to c1 is played. This bishop is no longer doing much of a role, staring at those pawns, so it's getting to a more active diagonal, also pointing over at the king side. Knight to d7, getting out of the way so that when white plays f4, the pawn move f3 is playable. Well, first she plays bishop to d6, maybe even thinking of putting direct pressure on the f-pawn, but Viktorija just closes this up with f5, and now the move f6 is played. So we have this completely blocked position with this long pawn chain, and once again, as I was mentioning before, the engine rates this as strongly favorable to black. And I think the engine is just completely wrong in this case. It's one of those cases, it's similar to the King's Indian defense, where the chess engine will rate white in the King's Indian defense as just much better for quite a long way into the game, and then all of a sudden black's kingside attack breaks through, and it changes its mind as it starts to see the tactical possibilities. So this is kind of the same thing with colors reversed. White has accepted, actually encouraged a blocked center, and given black more space in the center, which is usually valuable. But what white has in return is white has more space on the king side around the enemy king, and black's pieces have been pushed away from the king side. So these guys are not in any immediate position to defend over here on the king side. So this, if I was playing this, I would be very, very afraid if I was black in this position. But just to show you how computers evaluate things differently, it places this as about one pawn in favor of black. It rates it that highly. So anyway, Viktorija pushes on with her attack. For one thing, there is no immediate breakthrough. So the fact that these pieces over here are not in position to defend right away, it's not an immediate problem. It's just going to take a while for white to organize her attack. So pushing on to g4, that's just a first step. Knight to c5, it's in a good position for the knight, also putting some pressure on the backwards d-pawn. Knight to g3, more pieces towards the enemy king. Bishop to e7, the bishop drops back, maybe with some idea of supporting some pawn pushes to try and slow down white's attack. But h4, so now the pawns are really starting to roll. This bishop goes to c6. So this is what I mean. Now black has time to bring her pieces over because white's attack was not immediate. So we get this interesting clash. Now g5. And still at this point, the engine is rating this as about one pawn in favor of black. So that just goes to show, once again, as a chess player, if I had the black pieces, I would be pretty scared in this position. But anyway, bishop to e8 was played. So putting this bishop on a good defensive diagonal here. Actually, let's back up. What does the chess engine recommend? The chess engine is saying bishop to a4. So it's just continuing to favor ignoring the attack over here on the king side and going for counterplay, trying to chase this rook around. Bishop to a4, rook f1, and b5, just pushing ahead and trying for counterplay on the queen side. And that is the typical formula. You'll see this with colors reversed in the King's Indian. In that case, black is pushing for a king side attack, and white is expanding on the queen side and going for counterplay. But it's a delicate balance. At some point, if the attack looks like it's going to break through, you really need to make some defensive moves as well. So Apurva decides at this point to bring her bishop back to e8, put it into a defensive role. Now knight to h5 is played, and she decides just to trade off this attacking piece. Bishop takes, queen takes. So this is the point at which the chess engine evaluation changes. After this point, after this exchange, I mean, Black did maneuver this piece over to the king side and then trade it off for a piece which had just recently appeared over there, so it did take some time. And still we have this structure in the center which makes it difficult for Black to get more pieces over to defend. Maybe the knight could defend with a journey like this, but notice this square is controlled by white. So at this point the chess engine is slightly favoring white, not well, still within the range of even, just a fractional benefit towards white. Bishop to f8 is played, bringing the bishop back to defend the g7 square, and now bishop to f1. So this bishop is being maneuvered to. Well, I take that back. It could have gone. She could have gone directly to f3 if she wanted to get on this diagonal. But I think the idea is the bishop wants to also defend the d pawn as well as maybe reposition on a different diagonal. Okay, bishop to f1, king to h8, getting out of away from any pushes here. I guess opening up of the g file. There is the idea of just swinging this rook up and over, and then exchanging on f6 here and opening up the g file. So getting the king out of the way of that. The rook goes to d2 as predicted. Now this rook goes to d7, so there's a good lateral defense along the 7th rank. And now the rook swings over to g2. So very nice and logical build-up of the attack from Viktorija here. So I think this just makes a good example for how to play this kind of kingside attack, where you just lock up the center, you advance your pawns, and you bring your pieces in behind the pawns and prepare to open things up at the right time. But, well, notice how she's taking her time. There's still no immediate breakthrough here. So queen to d8, maneuvering the queen over, hopefully to a better defensive position. Bishop to d2. Yeah, so the bishop, cancel that. This bishop goes to d2. Okay, so this gets the bishop off the back rank so the other rook can come in, and maybe there's some ideas along this diagonal, I'm not sure. We'll wait and see. The queen goes over to e8, trying to trade off the queens, and Viktorija doesn't want that. She wants to keep the queen on. It gives her the best attacking chances, and the queen just goes back to d8. And this is one of those signs when you know things are not going well for you, when you can't find anything better than just moving your pieces back and forth. This is Black is just sort of waiting for the attack to break through and can't find any active defensive or counterplay ideas, and that's the real problem in this position at this point. So now bishop to e2 was played, getting this bishop on a more active diagonal and still keeping with the defense of the d3 pawn. Rook to b8 was played, so maybe this rook can lift up and help defend on the 7th rank. King goes to h2, preparing to actually triple on the g file. Rook b to b7, bringing more force along the 7th rank here. And rook a to g1, so both sides have completed their plans here. Queen to e7, a triple attack along the g file and a triple defense. But at this point, actually, the chess engine starts to see White's attack breaking through. So what is the best defense at this point? Well, the chess engine once again is recommending going for some counterplay with b5, or moving this bishop back to b7, to e7 rather. Cancel that. Yeah, putting the bishop on e7. Perhaps this allows the queen to come over and defend along the back rank. Perhaps that's a better idea than playing queen to e7. So that's bishop e7 is the engine's top choice there, and still rates it as favorable to White, but Black should be able to hold that kind of evaluation. So queen to e7, the queen drops back to g3, not the immediate breakthrough. I think right here the chess engine is saying that h5 is the move to play is the strongest move in the position, just continuing to push forward. But queen to g3, not in any hurry at this point. This rook d to c7, once again this appears to just be some shuffling of pieces. Now bishop to h5, bringing the bishop in for the attack. Queen to d6, so allowing the rooks to defend along the 7th rank. And but it's hard to see any active plan for black here. It appears that she's just shuffling her pieces and waiting for the attack to break through. Kind of a terrible position to be in. So queen to f3, king back to g8. Again, a little more shuffling. Bishop to e8. At some point, cancel that. At some point, I promise there will be a breakthrough. The bishop goes to e8. Yeah, this is just a funny little dance. The bishop isn't doing a whole lot there. The rook goes to c8 and the bishop goes back. So we're getting near the time control. It could be that, yeah, this was move 38, 39. It could be that Viktorija was just stalling. She might have been low on time and just stalling till she gets to move 40. So rook g3, queen c6, bishop to g6. Yeah, this is move 40. So finally on move 40, bishop to g6, playing this active move that's going to break through and really settle the game. The chess engine also points out that g takes f6 was playable here. It's all been set up, and there's another way to break through. You exchange off the f pawn, and well, the pawn can't take, so the queen has to take. And then bishop to g5, the bishop comes in, and the queen is chased off to d6. And this looks like a really serious attack, starting with f6. Let's see other ways to play it. Bishop to e8 also is a move there. So this looks like another way for the attack to break through. But anyway, this move bishop to g6, I always like these kind of moves. Putting the bishop on a square where it can be taken, but well, in fact, taking is pretty much black's only choice here. If the bishop is not taken, let's see, if she tries a move like h6, this was not played, but then the queen can come in to h5, either before or after an exchange, and things are really falling apart. The engine is recommending knight takes d3. Okay, well, let's play knight takes d3. I guess there's nothing better here. Knight takes d3. I thought that was just giving up. Oh yeah, it is. It's just giving up a piece because the rook's defending d3. So let's see. Let's make a move that doesn't give up a piece. Say the queen just moves sideways. Then g takes h6 breaks through over here on the king side. Let's see, queen back to d8 to try and defend, but h takes g7. Things are just falling apart over here. Rook takes, and bishop to h6. Let's see. Yeah, the rook is pinned. So bishop h7 check, and where's the king running? The king actually can only go to h7. Now there's some nasty discovered attacks. Anyway, white is really just crashing through with this attack. So that's why Apurva decides to just go ahead and take the bishop. And in fact, that's really the best move. Grab the bishop, and so Viktorija has sacrificed a piece, and is her attack strong enough? Well, she continues with f takes g6, opening up more lines. Cancel that. F takes g6. Okay, getting another pawn here. The pawn taking the place of the bishop in a way, controlling key squares around the king. And now knight takes e4 was played here. This is actually a little bit of desperation. We could try a defensive move like bishop e7. That's the chess engine's recommendation. But after the queen comes to h5, well, this is just going to be impossible to hold. The queen is threatening to come in here. Now let's see. Queen e6 is a try to defend. Cancel. Queen e6. That's right. There's no longer a pawn on this square, so the e6 square is available for the queen. Queen to h7 check. The king runs to f8, and now rook to f3 or rook to f1. Putting a rook on the f file is going to break through here, and this is a winning attack for white. So that's with best play. So in desperation, perhaps Apurva tries the move. Knight takes e4. Oh, I'm sorry. F takes g6 was played. get the position back on the board. F takes g6, getting this strong pawn over here. And now knight takes e4, trying to sacrifice back a piece. Of course, she's a piece up, so if she can give up a piece and finish off, or put off the attack, stall the attack with that, then that would be good. But, of course, white is under no obligation to take the knight. In fact, Viktorija just ignores the free piece there and continues with the attack with queen to h5. And this is the best way to play it. Bishop to d6. The bishop has to get out of the way so the king isn't mated immediately. Needs a square to run to. And now d takes e4 is played. Now she grabs the knight. Queen takes c4. Okay, coming through on the queen side finally, but too late. So the queen comes into h7, check. King goes here. Now g takes f6, as we saw. In the other line, the final breakthrough comes on the f file here. Queen takes h2, looking for counterplay. This bishop is hanging here. But rook g1 to g2 defends the bishop and ends any counterplay on the queen side. Queen goes back to g8. That was part of that maneuver, was getting on this file so she could come back and defend. But now the move, the very nice move, f7 is played here, and she resigns. So this is one of those funny positions where if the queen takes the queen, the pawn will take back, and this pawn cannot be stopped from queening. In fact, this leads to a mate very shortly. The best, according to the chess engine, is to sacrifice the rook on f7, but of course that would leave black hopelessly down material. So at this point, Apurva resigned, so a nice victory for Viktorija in this final round. So on the top boards, all the top board games were drawn. Nemcova couldn't get anything against Krush, so they finished up 1 and 2. Krush with Irina Krush is the new U.S. Women's Championship. This is her 7th win, and she finished with a score of 8.5 points. Katerina Nemcova, who had a great start, ended up in 2nd place with 7.5 points, and still a very good result for her. And then tied with her at 7.5 points is Nazi Paikidze, also a good tournament performance for her as well. And Viktorija Ni, whose game we just looked at, she ended up in 4th place. So congratulations to Irina and to all the players. Thanks for all the great games. I hope you guys enjoyed the coverage of the U.S. Women's Chess Championship, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.